Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Thursday, August 28th, 2014, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, conflicting reports build tensions in Russia. Then, what do charities do with all that donated money? And a judge orders a federal investigation on the Oklahoma City bombing. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
We are on the verge of the new renaissance. We are on the verge of so much good.
Well, it was our sixth president, John Quincy Adams, who famously said, "America does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. She is the well-wisher to freedom and independence for all. She is the champion and vindicator only of her own." Things have changed, haven't they? Now we have a government that is looking for monsters everywhere. Monsters real, monsters imaginary, monsters foreign, monsters domestic. When the only thing they serve is a military complex, everything looks like a war to them and everyone looks like an enemy. And so today we have the Ukraine is now in the news. It's going back and forth between Syria and the Ukraine. Today we have reports that there are Russian troops that have moved across, but these reports are coming from the Ukrainian government itself. The New York Times reports that Ukraine asserts Russian invasion and reinstitutes the draft. Now, they changed the wording from earlier in the day. They just said that the Russian president had declared that there had been Russian troops that had crossed into Ukraine. Now they're moving it back just slightly to say it's an assertion. Now, the Ukrainian president had said that there were 4,000 Russians, yet NATO is saying it's only about 1,000. They say they've released pictures. Of course, we haven't seen those pictures. And there's a quote from a Russian leader saying that there are some soldiers from Russia who, instead of their vacation, came across to fight. A very different scenario. Now, CNN reports that some commercial satellite imagery shows that there were 15 heavy trucks, 7 armored vehicles, and 9 artillery positions. It doesn't sound all that much different than a SWAT team deployment in the United States with a riot like in Ferguson. But RT is pointing out that they don't believe that this is happening. They're pushing back. It looks very much like what we've seen before, as Kurt Nemo points out, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine a hoax. He points out that back in 2010, the Georgian government said that they had been invaded by the Russian government. That was later exposed as not being true. And The Guardian put it this way. They said, not since Orson Welles persuaded Americans that Martians had landed had a whole nation been so duped. Well, we're being duped by something else. It's not just the Russians abroad that we need to be concerned about. It's what Paul Craig Roberts calls the Leninist in the White House. He says, according to Lenin, the Soviet government rested directly on force, not limited by anything, not restricted by any laws, nor any absolute rules. This is becoming the way that Obama is governing, of course, as Rand Paul is essentially pointing out the same thing. He says, Obama is not a king. In another article on Infowars.com, he says, not only is it an abuse of power, but I think it almost leads us to a constitutional crisis of sorts, the way that he is ruling by dictates. He points out, with cap and trade, we rejected it. The House rejected cap and trade. So now he's going around democracy. He's doing an end around the Congress, and you can't imagine that the American public would let him do this, or that we would let him do it, frankly. In other words, talking about the Congress. Of course, what he's talking about is the announcement that came out yesterday that Obama is pursuing a climate accord in lieu of a treaty. That's the headlines from the New York Times. He has pointed out that he's essentially going to shut down the coal industry with a treaty with the UN, with an agreement with the UN, rather than having a constitutional treaty that is ratified by Congress. And as Rand Paul points out, I can't believe that the Congress is letting him get away with it, or the American people. But that is the state of corruption in America. And look at this other evidence of corruption. We have an ex-CIA official who is proposing that Putin be assassinated. That's the way we solve our foreign policy problems. In a recent op-ed, Herbert E. Meyer, who served as a special assistant to the director of the Central Intelligence under the Reagan administration, said the goal of U.S. sanctions against Russia, quote, should be to get the Russians who've been keeping Putin in power or tolerating him to throw the knockout punch. If he's too stubborn to acknowledge that his career is over, the only way to get rid of Putin is feet first with a bullet hole in the back of his head. That would be okay with us. Yeah, very different from what Paul Craig Roberts, who is also in the Reagan administration, said. But that's the tenor of the government that we see now, a government that no longer respects the rule of law, that no longer respects the legislative powers of Congress, but essentially rules as dictators. It isn't going to be long before they start assassinating people. And of course, they have targeted leaders of peaceful demonstrations for assassinations, as we have shown. It's not just the foreign heads of state. They will kill anyone and everyone.
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does. Ugh.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.